I don't know. So you starting this or am I starting? Am I just going to just go? Here's the thing. Like I'm usually the one talking before somebody else starts. So now that I'm the one starting, I'm just not sure if I should just go.
Just introduce yourself and
yeah. So yeah, no, we're off and running. So hey everybody, obviously welcome to the workshop. Today we're going to talk about sales and marketing. I've done this presentation to several startup scenarios, startup I would say organizations, I guess, whatever. So it usually comes up with startups is like, do I focus on sales? Do I focus on marketing? Or do I really need both? So we're going to make this really short. Yes, you need both. We can all go home. Like just, we can wrap it up. I'm kidding, of course. But the reality of it is when you're in startup mode, you're really not sure. So how do you figure it out? Why is this? Now my slides aren't working, JP. This is insane. This has not been a good day for the technology version of GrowthCraft. And I tested this earlier, by the way. I tested this to make sure it worked, and it did.
It's up there now.
No, I know, but it's not moving. The slides aren't moving.
Are you in presentation mode?
I am.
Flick it back to your other, the other view with the navigator, and then try it again.
No, here we go. All right, now it's working. We got that.
Chuck will fix your technology problems, Tom.
I'm just moving on. So anyway, who we are, right? Obviously, you guys know who GrowthCraft is. Hopefully, I don't have to explain that to you because you're here already. But we as a collective, meaning who am I and GrowthCraft together. So I have had a lot of experience with sales. Obviously, as you can see on the top, I'm not gonna leave this up long enough for you to read the whole thing because quite honestly, I don't really care if you know that. Anyway, kidding, of course, guys. You guys can joke, laugh a little bit. I'm not super serious about this stuff. But so when I go back to the original slide about do I need sales? Do I need marketing? Let's start by defining it, right? So what exactly is marketing defined? And you notice the highlights there. Typically, marketing is either branding or reaching your prospects, educating your prospects. Essentially, marketing is all the stuff that you want to use to prepare your prospects to get popped into the sales funnel. So it's all the stuff that gets them ready to buy, so to speak. It's all about educating them. The AMA, which is the American Marketing Association, basically listed it as, and you can read it there, but it's activities that are around communicating, delivering, exchanging offers, getting value to the customer, making sure that they understand all of that. And so I'm assuming we all know what some of the marketing methods are, right? Which are advertising, social media, and so on and so forth, public relations, relationship marketing, branding, email marketing, direct mail. You will notice if you happen to know about marketing, you'll notice there's a lot of stuff missing up there. The reason there's a lot of stuff missing is because, well, I could probably fill a whole slide with just all the different types of marketing that are out there. But the one thing that I wanted to point out on this particular slide is when we say advertising today, it's very different than what some of us, and especially in my age group, think of advertising. Back in the day, most of our advertising was either television, radio, or print. And today, all three of those still exist, and all three of those are still worthy in certain environments. But the advertising also consists of pay-per-click, cost per click, SEO, things like that that are considered part of that marketing budget. So most of the important thing to remember is marketing gets information to the masses. So the whole point of marketing is to get your message across, get your value proposition out there, get people to understand who you are and what you're doing. One of the things that, and I'll talk about it a little bit here, where it's really designed to keep your company top of mind. Now, I just want to stop here for a second because I want you guys to think of this for a second. You can look this up. There's all kinds of statistics on it. You can find probably about 5 or 6 different versions of these statistics. So I'm not suggesting that these are perfect. Again, depending on who you talk to, you can find a bunch of different versions of this. What I mean by that is top of mind awareness. Essentially what they're saying is it takes somebody about somewhere between 6 to 9 occasions to see your message, to understand your message. It takes them about 3 to 5 times of hitting you with getting hit with understanding for them to have trust. So in order for them to have trust, they're saying somewhere they have to see you in some way, shape, or form, somewhere between 15 and 30 times, right? Like if you do the math on that, right? So if it takes them 6 or 8 or 9 times to understand it, and the understanding needs to happen a minimum of 3 times in order for them to trust it, then you're talking at the most, and even in that scenario, it's 27 touches, 27 information points. That's an awful lot of top of mind awareness that you have to create in order for somebody to get to that point. So, which is why, by the way, a lot of startups have issues with producing, 10 or 12 social media posts at a time and hoping that something happens through just, 10 or 12 social media posts. It's not designed to do that, right? So anyway, but the other part of marketing to remember is it is the top of the sales funnel. So it is considered part of the sales process, although most times and very typically, and I was just talking with somebody about this recently, but very typically the sales process in and amongst itself should be broken up into essentially 3 different versions. So you have your marketing process, which is the top of your funnel. You have the prospecting process, which is basically that down the funnel, but they're not customers yet. So what is your and then once they hit a certain point, you're transitioning them into a sales process because you're expecting them to become a customer at some point, very near future. The 3 processes are supposed to feed each other, right? So the marketing process feeds the prospecting process feeds the sales process feeds your revenue. So essentially all that goes in there. So I wanted to run through a little game, I guess, for you. And if everybody can, jump off of mute, I'm just going to let you shout it out. I just want to hear somebody say it. So if you don't feel comfortable talking, that's fine. But so I'm going to give you the power of marketing in a nutshell, right? So I'm going to give you the logo of a company, and I just want somebody to yell out the name of the company. See it? How many of these we can identify?
Shell.
Shell. Right. Very good. What about this one?
Volkswagen.
Volkswagen. Correct. How about this one?
Apple, of course.
Of course. Who said of course? What about this one?
Nike.
Nike. All right. Here's a little bit more difficult one, but I think you still get it. Mazda. Very good. How about this one?
Not anymore.
I don't know what that one is.
Yeah. I tried to throw you a curveball. You guys caught it. All right. But you still knew who it was, right? Like, come on. And then the last one I have on this slide is this one. Mercedes, right. So the point of all this, the point that I was making here is think about how often you see those logos in order for you to remember who they are, right? They spend a tremendous amount of money on top of mind awareness. So, and again, it's not just these companies. I just picked a handful because I just felt like it. And I picked ones that I thought were going to have at least recognizable, because I wanted to prove my point, right? I didn't want you guys to go, no, we have no idea who that is. So, because I didn't want to look like a fool, right? But the reality of it is, this is the power of that top of mind awareness kind of brand marketing. Now, do we trust every one of these? Probably not. I would imagine not. But and even speaking from my own personal standpoint, there's at least one on here that I prefer not to buy ever. But again, the point is though that I know who they are. Now once I know who they are, and I trust something that they said, I trust either my own opinion about something they said, or I trust their opinion about what they said. So there's a trust factor either on my own or on one that they've produced themselves to make me think of them, right? So so that's I just wanted to give you an example of like just the power of being able to, spend huge amounts of money on marketing and people be able to recognize who you are. So we'll move to the sales part. Going to start it off the same way, just define it a little bit, right? Which is according to the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. It's specifically the transfer of ownership. Now I'm going to stop there from the definition because it's a lot more. The property can mean anything, right? The property can mean the software that you're buying, and it's going from one person to another. But that person could be a company. I understand, again, coming straight from a dictionary, it's pretty literal. But understanding that the act of specifically selling is the transfer of ownership is really the most important part of that definition. And then, of course, sales as a adjective, I guess, is what you would say, is like it's operation of selling, right? Or the activities. It's promoting the selling of the goods or services. So it's the sales process. It's the communication part of it. It's the contract negotiations. That stuff is all part of the operations of sales. And so again, simply put, it's the act of customer acquisition. So the more sales is very transactional, right? And I guess, and this might actually be on another slide, so I'm going to say it now anyway, just because we just went through both of the definitions. But the very simplest version of this is that marketing is educational, sales is transactional. And the overlap is really where most people get confused. There's an awful lot of overlap in today's market because now today's version of marketing can bring them a hell of a lot deeper down the funnel than they ever have before. And in some cases where you have like, for example, e-commerce platforms or software as a service, you don't necessarily even have to get involved with a salesperson. So you're actually going down the whole marketing funnel, and then your transaction is still on the same marketing platform that they're marketing to you. So it gets a little gray in today's world, but the long and short of it is, if you do have a more complicated sale, the processes still are in place. And even if you have an easy process to your sale, which again is, I'm going to send you through some sort of marketing funnel online. I'm going to push you to a web page where you can click buy. It's still a process involved in it. And there's still stages to that process until they hit that buy button, until they click that buy button. Right. So, and guys, we started a little late, so I am going a little fast just because I want to still stay within the same time frame for today. And I still want to leave some time for questions. So keep notes of your questions, so to make sure to ask, especially if I go too fast by some of these. So here, and for a startup, I really do think that this is important that you stop and think about how your sales are going to happen. So what do your sales channels look like? There's a bunch of them out there. And if you've never looked at sales channels before, I'm going to throw a bunch of them at you. So, and I'll give you some definitions, and I'm going to give you some pros and cons of them. So some of the sales channels that are out there are just 1099 sales reps, right? You're just going to get somebody and say it. So 1099 is basically commission only sales reps. So we're going to say, you're going to come work for us, but technically you're not working for us. You're going to sell our product, and we're only going to pay you if you close deals. That happens a lot. A lot of people use them. Not in Massachusetts very much, just to let you know. They're used quite a bit more around the rest of the country. Massachusetts is really trying to weed these guys out. Massachusetts as a state is really trying to weed out the 1099 rep. So, but again, there's still pros and cons to them. If you're selling a complicated sale, or if you're selling an adjacent product, like for example, if you're selling medical devices. So you're going to sell, medical, not devices. Like, so say you're selling the medical equipment, like the beds and the IV stands and stuff like that, and someone pops up with a device that could be sold along with the IV stand. Your 1099 reps will be like, sure, I'll sell that too. Why not? It's an add-on for me. So it's just more money. So you have your 1099 reps, telesales reps, essentially smile and dial guys, people that are, or girls, people that are on the phone all day and they just pick up the phone and dial 100 phone numbers a day. Outside sales reps are more like out in the field kind of reps that'll travel, and actually go visit customers for you, but they represent you and they're only representing you. Distributors or manufacturers reps, the difference basically there is a 1099 rep is usually a solo person. Distributors usually employ several solo people like the 1099 reps, but they all fall under one umbrella for for people. The brokers are a little different too. Not every kind of sale uses a broker, so we'll just leave that at there for now until we get into the description parts of it. Value-added resellers and distributors, again, are very similar. There's a lot of similarities between those three, actually. The VARs, the manufacturers reps, and the 1099 reps are all very similar, and you're going to see that I group them together when I give you the pros and cons. But let's look at some of the sales channel pros. So 1099 reps, one of the advantages to them is they only get paid if they sell. So you can have a whole crap load of salespeople out there selling for you without any budget at all. You don't have to pay them anything unless they sell. And there's no need to fire them if they're underperforming because they're not costing you any money, right? So that there are some genuinely good pros to having 1099 reps if you're in that stage of your growth process. Telesales reps, a lot of activity very quickly. They can pick up the phone, they can reach out to 100 people. Now we know because we get those phone calls. Very rarely that somebody answers those calls, but again, we'll wait for the cons to get there. But they're all in-house. They all work directly for you. So they're easy to change directions. They're easy to manipulate scripts. They're easy to change things. They can give you feedback directly, like immediately. If something happens on a call and nothing worked, you can help them fix that problem right away if you have them in-house. You have the calls can be monitored for quality. There are software programs out there that you can record calls, listen to them later. So if you have sales reps that are on the phone all day long, and you can very easily employ a software like that, so you can listen in and give them critiques and help them out, fix their problems the next day. So here's where the three distributors, manufacturers, reps, brokers, value added, they all fall into the same category. And the pros to that, again, they only get paid if they sell. One of the advantages of this versus a 1099 rep is they already have a management structure in place. Usually these types of environments have like some sort of leadership where you're talking directly to the leadership and not necessarily the direct reps, which can be a pro and con in and of itself. But the advantage there is they do have some sort of management structure in place, so you can leverage it. Again, no need to fire underperforming reps. If you're not paying them unless they sell, then you don't really have to pay for them. I mean, there's nothing to fire them for, right? Now, there are some things that you have to be at least a little aware of here, making sure that they're representing your brand well enough, because a lot of these manufacturers, the VARs and the distributors, they are contracted type environments where you're going to have a contract with them. So you do have to watch the contract a little bit, make sure that they're not misrepresenting you, because you can pull that contract from them. So if they're selling you like crazy, but they're selling you the wrong way, you can technically pull the contract from them if you don't want that kind of sale happening. But again, that would be up to you at that point. You have to judge that for yourself. Outside reps, the pros to that, a lot of face-to-face interactions, which in turn builds relationships. So if you have a sale that you think the life of the customer is going to be long, if the sale is high, this could be a good avenue. It's also used as a marketing tool or branding tool. You can use your outside sales reps to go to networking events. You can use them to go to conferences. You can send them places because they technically and physically work for you. And they're expected to be outside reps, meaning they're not expected to be sitting in the office all day. You can leverage them as part of your branding and part of your marketing tools. And you get immediate market feedback, right? So you have you have somebody to talk to about what's going on in the field. They're out there, they're talking to people, they're introducing themselves, they're also meeting competitors. Especially if they're at conferences, they can give you direct feedback right away about what's going on in the market. And then of course, the last one is customers do perceive, if you have outside reps, that there's a higher product value to your sale. They not to mention the fact that you probably should have a higher product value, because if not, you're not going to afford an outside rep anyway, because these guys tend to be a little bit more expensive. And of course they can handle more complex sales. Typically we see outside, the older version of the outside rep is not really that big anymore. We don't see a lot of them, but they do exist, and it is for those two purposes. That it's a very complex sale, meaning you need some sort of sales combination of a salesperson that is in a lead generation role and some sort of sales engineer something like that, where it's a very complex, you know, the ones and zeros behind what you're selling is not going to be sold. And you don't want the engineer selling it, right? Let's all just be realistic here. Engineers are not the best salespeople, but so to have a sales presence in the room with a sales engineer, you're typically selling a much higher ticket item anyway, which is why the customer perceives it that way. And higher transaction values. So of course that's the same thing. So what are some of the cons? Like, so I very typically, and I'm just going to let you guys know, when I do this presentation in person, I try to do it interactively, right? Like, so let's talk about it. What do you guys think some of the cons are? So if you want to do that, I'm okay with it. We do have about a half an hour. So I went a little fast, so we can do a little bit of this if you want. If you don't, I'm fine with that too. But when you're talking about cons of 1099 reps, what do you think might be some of the negatives there?
You have no way to motivate them outside of them actually making the sales for your product to make their commission.
Absolutely. Anybody else or anything else? You can keep answering if you want, if nobody else is going to.
It's a limited control on how they're representing you.
Yeah, very little control. You have very little control over what they do. As a matter of fact, and again, I'm going to revert back to here in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, if you employ a 1099 sales rep and then you dictate to them what you want them to do, the state will then view them as an employee anyway, and then you're required to pay them all the way that you would pay a state and run employee. Pay the sales, pay the taxes on it, pay all the payroll taxes, all that stuff. So if the state catches wind of you having a 1099 rep and then telling them what to do day to day, then you lose that as a 1099 rep anyway. You get stuck, and the state won't allow it. So you got to be careful with that, right? To Jaime's point, they're not always working for you. You can't control what they do during the day, right? So if they decide to take the day off, they take the day off. If they decide they're going to sell somebody else's product tomorrow, they're going to sell somebody else's product tomorrow. You have literally zero control over what they're doing. You also possibly have no control over if they're doing more than one job. So they can 1099 if it's a sale, I can go, I'll just do it at night when I'm off my other job, right? So yeah, Nick, no problem. I'm going to sell for you. You got it. I'm going to 1099. Don't worry. You don't have to pay me unless I close something. But then you have no idea when they're working, when they're not, and they may have another job that they're doing, which is the other point here is they're not always focused on you. And the other thing that happens too, that some people don't give enough credit to, is that they're not always responsive, right? They're not always like, if you can reach out to them 2 or 3 times and not get any response to them because you need to change something, or you've changed some sort of marketing material and you want to make sure they're using the most updated version, whatever the reason, but they don't always come back and engage with you, on a regular basis, or at least to your liking. So what about phone salespeople? Anybody have what they would think it might be a negative on a phone salesperson?
For me, from the actually the customer side, I hate it when I get telesales. So like,
Sure.
It might not be the most effective source anymore. I mean, depending on your product, I guess.
Yeah, they're dreaded, right? Like everyone gets dreaded every time you get what else? Anything else?
Do you have to
Very
get them
low
the phone
conversion
numbers?
rate.
Sorry, say that again.
Very low conversion rate.
Yep, absolutely. Was that with you, Kevin, right? Yeah, very low conversion rate. True. That's also very true. Anything else?
Yeah. Do you have to purchase the numbers for them?
Yeah. I mean, if most of the telesales reps, again, unless you're using a 1099 guy for telesales, but even then, even the 1099 guys, they would expect at least some sort of list or some sort of guidance on the list, right? That you're going to give them. But so those are all very good. Let's see what we have here. So most people don't consider it consultative, right? So most people, when they if they're talking to a sales rep on the phone, it's usually perceived as a lower transaction value. So the sales tend to be simpler. The sales cycle doesn't build relationships. They tend to be single sale transactions. How often you get a telesales person that you talk to the same salesperson over and over? Almost never, right? It just doesn't happen very often. Now, there are, again, there are some occasions where, where there's a mix of like the way that the sales come in, and your customer success team almost turns into a sales team on the backside of things. So again, that's a little different. There are always these like statistical anomalies that you can talk about that doesn't happen exactly like this or exactly like that. And that's all, those are all true. We're talking generalities here. So, and they tend to be smaller gross profit per transaction too, the telesales stuff. But to your guys' point, it's everything that you said is also very true. So you get, you get annoyed, people get annoyed by it. You also have no control over how often people pick up the phone. Just never mind what they do once they answer the phone, but you have no control over whether or not somebody answers the phone or not. So you could have somebody dial in 100 phone numbers a day in hopes to talk to 1 or 2 people. Like that's not very, somebody mentioned it earlier. I think it was Kevin. It's a very low conversion rate, right? Like there's no way to and there's a very little opportunity to increase that conversion rate. Now, there are some slick things you can do. There are some techniques, and there's some talent out there that can raise the bar from that 1% to like 2 or 3%, but you're probably not getting a tremendous amount over that, right? Like, because again, think about how many times you get a phone call that you don't recognize the phone number, and you just look at it and go, I ain't answering that. I don't know who that is. I'm just not answering it. So the cons of the value-added resellers or the brokers, distributors, they're going to be similar as the 1099 people. So rather than ask you guys, I'll put these ones up here and then we can just talk about it a little bit, right? So they often sell multiple products, so no focus on yours. They're selling competing products. They can look for spiffs. So what that really means is, again, if you're talking about a value-added reseller and they're selling multiple, durable medical equipment pieces, then you're going to have eventually there's going to have some crossover in the IV stand that company A sells and the IV stand that company B sells are completely different, but your add-on to the IV only gets attached to company B. And if company A is offering a tremendous what they call spiff, so there's like bonus money involved in selling it, they're not even talking to people about that company B product because they want the spiff, they want the extra money. So there's also that where they're looking at competing products. It can be driven by price and only price. A lot of times these value-added resellers will go sell the lowest product possible just because it's the easiest way in the door. And they don't really fight. They don't look for value. They don't look for value-added communication. They don't look for building that relationship in that way. They look for building the relationship in a way that the more products they can introduce to somebody, the more valuable they look, but they don't always care what the best value to the customer is. They can be, again, difficult for brand loyalty. So again, you have no direct control over their activity. So they may be making 10 phone calls for you today and 20 tomorrow and 0 the next day, or 0 for 3 days in a row. You have no idea or no control over how they do it. It can also be very difficult to obtain feedback at times. Again, even with a management structure in place, because even the management structure doesn't always get feedback from their reps. Contract negotiations need to be very clear. This is what I was talking about earlier. So you do have a little bit of leverage here. If you have an amazing product that VARs really want to sell, and you make sure that the contract is crystal clear about your expectations and they don't meet them, then you have every right to pull that contract and go sign up with another VAR, right? So there is some control there. But you have to, your power comes from the value of your product. If you're selling something that everybody wants and it's like, and all the VARs, if the VARs are reaching out to you because they want to sell it, then you have more control and you have more power there. But you have to make sure that the contract negotiations are crystal clear. Make sure that you understand everything that's in that contract and you know how to get out of it if some of these things above here are not being done for you. So what are the cons of the outside reps? The biggest one is not even the first one I list here, and I don't know why, but the biggest one is real. Oh no, it is. Sorry, it is the first one. It's expensive. And I mentioned that earlier in the slides earlier too. When you're hiring reps that you expect to be out and about and traveling for you, they demand a lot of money. You're not paying an outside rep 40, 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year. They're very expensive, and it's gonna really be demanding of them. So, and again, because of that is why we were talking about earlier, we want this to be a pretty high ticket price, right? We want this to be a much higher volume, either volume or price. Territories can seem geographically small, so meaning, you know, if you expect somebody to travel for you and drive up and down the street, that's one thing, but travel for you being on a plane is another thing. So you got, again, very costly if you're looking at what you're expecting these outside reps to do. And again, being part of your marketing program where you want them to go to conferences and things like that can also be very expensive. There can be a trust factor on your side, not on the customer side, on your side, meaning if they're not in the office every day and you can't see them and hear them and talk to them on a seemingly very regular basis, do you trust that they're out there doing their job? Do you trust the fact that they're out there performing for you? If you don't trust them, well, first of all, if you don't trust them, fire them, get rid of them, because there's a reason you don't trust them. But we'll get it. That's a topic for another day. But there can be some trust factors, and then what ends up happening a lot of times is people will put things into place to mitigate some of that misled trust or untrustworthiness, and that can drive really good salespeople out the door. So there's that part of it too that you have to be at least aware of and cognizant of. So what are we talking about here today? So all that said and done, I know that was a long drawn out thing to get to where we're going. That you know, in general, that marketing is for information, demand, interest, essentially lead generation. Sales is for interpersonal interactions, for meetings, for cold calls, networking, for closing business, and it's for customer acquisition. So the goal really is to have a true process for all three, right? And the simplest comparison, like I said earlier, is marketing is educational, sales is transactional. So what does this mean for a startup, right? So I just showed you, but like, is it sales? Is it marketing? Do I need both? I think we're asking the wrong question. And I start this out and I go through this whole process because I really want you to understand what I just went through is very typical what people think about when they're thinking about, do I need sales or do I need marketing, right? And they go through all these scenarios in their brain about how do I get a marketing program off the ground? What should I be looking at for marketing? Should I do social media? Should I do email? Should I do this? Should I do that? And what happens if a sale comes along? Who's going to manage it? Am I going to manage the sale? Do I hire salespeople? There's like this big thing. And I think that whether you're questioning whether or not you need sales or you need marketing is really the wrong question. What you really should be asking yourself are questions like, can I afford to leverage both? Do I have the funding? Do I have the money to do all of these things well? Can I do marketing and produce a lead generation process that'll feed a prospecting process that'll feed a sales process? Can you afford to leverage it? And if you can't afford it, do you have the bandwidth to do both? Can I, as an individual person that's just starting out a company, do I have the bandwidth and the knowledge to start a marketing program and actually implement the marketing program into the prospecting and sales process? Do you have that bandwidth? If the answer is yes, you have one of these two things, then my suggestion to you is absolutely go design your marketing program, make sure you have it under wraps, go do it, have the marketing program feed into your prospecting and into your sales program. One of these two things have to fit though. You either have to have the money to do it or pay somebody to do it, or you have to have the bandwidth to do it yourself with the knowledge to do it yourself. And again, if you have the bandwidth and you can go find some educational pieces, there's a lot of tutorials out there. There's a tremendous amount of information out there that you can actually read and design these processes on your own. It's not rocket science, guys. Honestly, it really isn't. But it's time consuming. It's extremely time consuming to do these things by yourself. But if you are a startup and you have no other choice, then you can start thinking about, how do I choose where I spend my time? And if you have answered to no to these, all right, I don't have the money, I don't have the bandwidth, I can't do all of this stuff, then what do I focus on, right? And that's the question I really started with. And we got a long way around to getting here. But the reality of it is, focus on sales. If you have no other time in your budget, in your day, you have no other money, you should be focusing on the transactional piece of your business, because sales creates revenue, revenue creates value, right? So the idea, what I'm trying to get at here is like, and what I mean by focus on the sales is there should be, I'm assuming as a startup, there's low-hanging fruit. There should be opportunities for you to either use your own network, use an extended network, so people that you know who know people, so to speak, right? So depending on what your product or service is, and I'm just going to use a very simple one because you know, I've spent a lot of time on it, selling it, buying it, all of it, right? But let's say I'm starting a brand new CRM. I have a new CRM in front of me that I built. I don't have any money for marketing, and I don't have any time to go, you know, produce a marketing plan and all the sales stuff. So what do I do with the CRM? The first thing I do is I go to my own network. I go to you guys and say, hey, do you need a new CRM? I got this brand new CRM. I'd love to sell it to you. And you can give it away for free to a certain amount of people and then translate that into sales as you go. But you can at least get up and off the ground running if you have a low-hanging fruit. So the most important thing, in my opinion anyway, is if you have no bandwidth, no money, is to focus on who you can sell this to that you know. If you don't know anybody that you can sell it to, I think you have a different question you should be asking yourself, right? Because if you don't have any friends, family, network, LinkedIn community, anything, any place where you have a community of people that have zero interest in what you're selling, then I think you might have a different problem. But again, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that you might be thinking of it. You might have to rethink the processes in what you have in place. So that's 5:15 exactly. I was hoping to give you 15 minutes for Q&A, so I was able to do that. So let's we can open it up. Anybody have any questions based on what we just had?
I'd like to cover logo real quick. The logos you used obviously were well known.
Yeah.
The logo that I'm basically got right now is it's very descriptive to what I do, but it's also kind of involved as far as to reproduce in different ways, being marketing materials and etc.
Yeah.
I guess in a quick response, what would be the kind of things to think about when you are actually creating your logo?
So there's a couple of things. Number one, I think, and you've mentioned you've mentioned one or two, but making sure that it's distinctly recognizable is important. But the most important is make sure that it has negative capabilities as well, meaning it shows in white. So a lot of times if people have, and you'll see this with people who have like a lot of color in their logo, they'll also have a black and white version of it, even though it's like their lead logo is very colorful. So things to think about is like if you have to put it on a backdrop, like if let's say you're sponsoring a community event or something like that, and they're going to say, we're going to take this black, this black sheet, and we're going to put everybody's logo on it in white. Can you do that? Is that, if your logo can't be replicated in a single color tone, in a monotone color like that, you might want to rethink it a little bit too. So the things that I think about are, to your point, distinctly recognizable, easy to put places, meaning like if it's perfectly square and you want to put it in a round like format, it makes it awkward, right? Like you can't really do that very well. So make sure it's manipulatable to formatting, and make sure the color is easy to go back and forth between full color and monochrome, if that makes sense, Kevin.
Yeah, it does. It almost sounds like versatility for use
Yes.
is at the top of the list.
Especially for startups, and think about this too. And again, we won't spend a tremendous amount of time on it, but think about this. Logos go through iterations, right? So you'll see companies that have very, very simple logos. They blow up and they redo them because now you are a recognizable brand, and you don't care what other people think, and you're not worried about manipulating it for versatility. You expect other people to cater to your needs because you have that kind of clout. but that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen very easily. That goes, you know, and even the ones I had up on the screen, if you think about those are billion-dollar companies, and they're all very simple.
Right.
Can I make one comment because I made this mistake? Sorry, it's so loud in here. I would also, because my own company's logo, which we've had for 19 years, it's long. And we've had difficult in trying to put it on if like you're doing swag or something like that. And I think we might have done a version of 2 lines, but that was something I didn't really think about way back when.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
I have a question about like the very first early sales, like the early adopters, and
Yeah.
before you really even have a product ready to sell to the masses. These are the people who arguably are doing you a favor by taking your product and sort of showing it out into the world. And so I've heard that, you know, you should, even these early adopters, they should be paying customers. But like, what's your take on that? Is it like, if I have like my first prototype that I want to like give to someone to try out, should I be charging them for this very rudimentary crude prototype? Or
So let me answer this in a way, Dan, because I know what your product is. So I have kind of an opinion about that on its own merit, but let's just talk in general just for a second, right? So I have mixed emotions about it. For certain products and services, like you have to have some sort of proof of concept, right? So you can make deals with people in the beginning of all this, right? That says, and again, I use the CRM for example, right? If I put a number in my brain and say, I'm going to take the first 20 people that say yes and just give it to them for free. But there's still, in my opinion, there's still a caveat to this. So if I'm going to give it to you free, I want you to give me testimonial feedback. I want you to, like, you need to be part of my marketing program, right? I need to be able to leverage your experience with my product in order to make this. And then the next 20, I can give a steep discount to. So I want them to be paying customers, but I'm willing to give them a discount. So again, let's say the CRM is $50 a license, and the first 20 you give away free, the next 20 you give it to them for $25 a piece. Well, now you got 40 customers. So your marketing messaging can be a little bit different, and you've got a small income coming in. So you got a little bit of money to spend on that and regurgitate the business, right? So for you personally, I think it's a little different, and you're not going to be building 6, 8, 10, 12 prototypes and then letting people use them for free. Like, I would definitely not suggest that, right? But if you're going to build one and you're going to say, I want this one prototype to be out and about, I want it to be driving around as much as possible. I might even think about some sort of loaner program where I'm giving it to different people in different areas for a short period of time and just asking them to drive it around, but no ownership. Like, you don't want them to own it. You're going to keep it. It's going to be yours. But them doing you the favor is, maybe you have some, again, something that wasn't on these slides, and nobody really talks about it a lot anymore, but it is still super valuable, is guerrilla marketing. How many times do we see the big trucks with like logos on the side of the truck, and we go look it up? Like, we just go look up, what is that? Or some home improvement company that drives down our street and you're like, oh, I was just going to do plumbing, I might as well call that guy because I just saw that. So something like that would work really well. Like, and believe it or not, Zipcar did this really well. I don't know if you guys remember Zipcar when they first came out, but Zipcar did it really well. They had every single car they used had their logo plastered all over it, right? And so for you, I would might think of something like that, where I produced the prototype, plastered my whole logo all over it with some messaging, and be pretty succinct and clear about what you want the messaging to be, because you want it to be single line, easy to read, like people can get it. And then lend out the prototype so people can drive it around in different areas, depending on where you think your market is. Again, if your market is wealthy people and you're here in Mass, maybe you drive it around Belmont or Newton or Andover, Weston, Wellesley. If you know people in that area, I mean, you're not going to drive it around Lawrence and Chelsea and Lowell, but that's, I mean, and that's something you could do yourself too. You just drive it around. But again, I would not, in your situation, I would not just be producing them to give them to people. Absolutely not. Now, that being said, you can, on the flip side to that, to your point, if you have early adopters, and if these are really truly early adopters, like friends and family that are absolutely willing to help you and they know they're going to help you, then you can tell them, listen, it costs me X amount of dollars to build this thing. I want to build one for you, but you just pay the cost of the building of it. That's it. I'm not going to charge you the retail price, but help me out with at least the covering the cost. Believe it or not, friends and family, a lot of times would be willing to do stuff like that.
Yep.
So
Okay, great.
if the prototype cost you $5,000 to build, I have no idea. I know what you do, but I don't know if the prototype costs you $5,000 to build, and for $5,000, one of your friends and family are going to get this cool thing to drive around in.
Yeah.
I mean, why would they say no, right?
Right.
And again, on top of the $5,000, they're really helping you out, and they're not putting money in your pocket either. It's not like, and I would be pretty transparent with them in that case. If it's really truly something that you want to do or you're thinking about doing, be transparent with them. Show them. Say, here, there's my cost. It's $5,000. And even if I would also include the cost of the wrapping and like all the guerrilla marketing stuff. Include that in the cost of the production, and just let them know it's going to be X number of dollars, and here's all my cost. It's all laid out for you.
Yeah.
That's how I would approach something like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, you mentioned CRM.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with what that is.
It's customer relationship management software. It's like the HubSpots of the world.
Yeah.
HubSpot, Salesforce, Soho.
Okay. Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Cool. Thank you.
Tom, I have a question,
Yes.
unless somebody else did. When you're in the stages, like the early stage and so forth, and budgets are tight, but you have to project out what to allot for spending, whether it's sales, marketing, you have to choose one. What recommendations would you give around that?
So
Whether it's
hard.
percentages, I know, and because it's so early, but how do you give some guidance about where to start and know what's the right sort of level? And maybe there.
You just muted yourself mid-sentence.
Maybe there isn't, but any advice I think.
No. There's some generalities here that you can, especially if you're getting funding and things like that. Like, for example, there tends to be this 2-to-1 ratio that we've used in the past, right? So for every dollar you spend in marketing, you're going to spend $2 on sales. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean, like, because sales has a tendency to be a bit more expensive than marketing, right? You can go do a marketing program for $2,000-3,000 a month, but you can't hire a salesperson for $3,000 a month. It doesn't work that way. Like the salaries and all the things that are included in salaries, like payroll taxes and all that stuff, increase of quite a bit. So there's usually a 2-to-1 ratio. So and we tend to use percentages like 10 and 15%. Like, so if you're going to put 10% into marketing, you should put 15% into sales. So 25% of your revenue goes back into sales and marketing, which, by the way, has been proven time and time again that it's worth it. Just food for thought. About 10 years ago, I was looking at Salesforce, right? So Salesforce.com, and I know, Paul, you're a Salesforce guy, if I remember correctly, right? So Salesforce at one time was about 12 million. I know they're way bigger than that now, but they're about $12 billion a year. Does anybody have a clue what their sales and marketing budget was of that 12 billion? Anybody have a thought as to what they think their sales and marketing budget might have been? 3 billion? Nope.
6 billion.
You're 100% right. I mean, $6 billion. They were spending 50% of their revenue directly back into sales and marketing. So they found the value of that. They saw it right away, and they were like, and now they're what, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 billion, something like that. They're, 5 times what they were when they started that process. And right now they're not quite at 50% anymore because they have a lot more investors to answer to, but they're still around 30. They're about 30%. So think about that. If they're at 50 billion, they're spending $15 billion in sales and marketing. Now, again, remember, that includes like base salaries, commission packages, marketing programs, partnership programs. They've got a lot in that budget. But so, and I'm not suggesting that a startup spends 50% back into their, into their sales and marketing, but depending on what you're doing, I mean, I can see it, honestly, I can see it, but the rule of thumb is usually about 25%, 15% on sales, 10% on marketing. And even if you even if you have a very well-established sales program where you don't feel like you need to dump more money into it. Like, for example, you have a really seasoned sales team, like 5 or 6 or 7 salespeople that are really awesome, and you're not worried about how much more money you need to pump into sales. You should still be spending 10% on marketing, because if that team is as good as you think they are, then that additional marketing money is going to translate into more sales for them anyway, because if they're that good. But yeah, so Cheryl, hopefully I think that answered your question, right? So
Oh, that's helpful. Just give some context. Yes, thank you.
anybody else? We got probably time for one more question.
I got one for you. Where do you find these reps?
So depending on what you're looking for, like 1099 reps, you're not going to find them. Usually you'll bump into those guys at like networking events and stuff like that. And it's somebody that that they don't advertise. The VARs you definitely can find though. Like, so you can look at, in just about every industry has them. So you can look into, for example, right now I have a client, I consult a robotics company. So they actually have value-added resellers that will sell the robot arms and the conveyor belts and some software that goes with them and like a bunch of different things. So the company that I am working with is looking at the VARs to sell their software, considering they were already selling the robotic arms. The software that they designed fits into the robot arms. So, and I gave them the same spiel I just gave you guys. There are pros and cons to that. Just make sure you know what it is going into it. And by the way, they now have their own sales and marketing deployment on their own. They decided not to do the VAR after talking to them. Not that they're not valuable. I don't want to crap on them. I just want to say that it can be difficult to use them. You just got to really know and understand what you're getting yourself into. Make sure you do a lot of vetting. Make sure you do, and let me just give you one question to ask them, by the way. If you're planning on using a VAR and they offer referrals or testimonials or customers that you can talk to, tell them you want to talk to a customer that no longer uses them. Tell them you want to talk to a customer that has disconnected with them. They can pick the reason. I don't care why. They can, whatever reason they have to discontinue. Maybe they stopped selling the product or the company went out of business. I don't care. Whatever the reason is, but tell them you want to talk to a company that does not do business with them anymore and see what their reaction is. If they give you somebody immediately, they're probably worth at least investigating and talking to. If they give you any kind of trouble with that, like, oh, I'm not sure, I'd have to call them, I have to talk to them, run for the hills. That's at least one little tidbit you can use.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Cool. Now I have one question for you guys. Was this at least okay? Was it helpful? Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Was it worth your time?
It's very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Good. I know I went through it really fast. I apologize for that, but we got on so late. I didn't want to lose anything, and I wanted to give you guys time to ask some questions. So cool. I'm glad it was useful.
And will this recording be available? So
No, I'm going to give it to everybody but you. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we'll put it in. We'll make sure it's in the community for you.
It'll get put in the, it'll get posted in the workshop section.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Tom, can I ask one more quick one? Is when it comes to distributors,
Yep.
same idea. What question would you ask them that would give you a reaction?
So similar, I think you'd want to ask again, anytime you ask, here's the thing. And again, I'm coming at this definitely from a consulting standpoint, right? So when I get engaged with my clients, I offer it right up front, offer it almost all the time. Say, if you'd like to talk to people, I recommend you talk to at least 1 or 2 people I'm currently doing business with, and at least 1 or 2 people that I'm not. And typically when I offer it, you'd be surprised how many people go, nah, I'm good. I don't need, because that's a trust factor, right? Like, you're not afraid, you're not hiding anything. Distributors are a little bit easier they're a little bit quicker to give you that non-connected customer anymore, because they tend to have deeper contracts, right? Like, so a distributor is going to be selling, I'll give you an example. I used to be in the restaurant industry. So a food service distributor, somebody who's is delivering to restaurants, right? So I have a new product that I want distributed to restaurants. I call up Cisco or neighborhood or whomever, right? and I say, I'd like you to distribute this product for me, and would you give me a customer that you don't do business with anymore? They'd be like, sure, how many do you want? I'll give you 5 of them, because, you know, their products weren't good enough, so I stopped selling them, right? Like, so they can flip it around on them a little bit easier, right? So you just want to, I would change the question a little bit and say, I'd like to talk to a customer that you don't like, or a customer you don't want me to talk to. Like, is there somebody that I can talk to that, like, and I probably wouldn't word it like that. I'm trying to figure out in my brain, like a better wording for you, but it's definitely something, like, you definitely want to talk to somebody that you think that they think is not going to speak highly of them, and see what they say. So
Like-
again, it's not so much, you know, give me somebody who's not using you anymore, because they'll probably give you 5 of them that, and then when you come back to them, be like, those 5 guys hated you. And they're like, yeah, no, they hated us because we discontinued their product because they sucked. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not going to worry about it. But if you ask them for a product that, you know, hey, possibly word it like this. Is there a customer that you used to have that you still wish you had? Like, is there a customer that you wish you still could be selling right now? Who's that? Like, what does that look like? And tell me why they're not your customer anymore. That might be different, because if they wish they still had them, they might still be in business because they're wishing they still had them.
Great.
Cool.
Yeah, appreciate that, Tom.
No problem. No problem. Anytime. And again, for those of you still left, there's only a couple of the founders here, but if you ever want to talk, we do have office hours on the site. So I'll be happy to talk to anybody for, you know, if you want to click on the office hours and take up a little bit of time, I'll be happy to chat with you about, especially if it's something specific to your company. I'd really be more excited about something specific for you. If you had something that you wanted to kind of go over, review, or talk about, or something like that, if it has specifically pertains to your company. But feel free to use the office hours to do so. Cool. Anything else, JP? You have any 2 cents you want to throw in here, or Chuck?
I think we're good. I do want to say that, you know, sorry for the confusion here with the link. But we're just testing out different ways of doing it. Want to make sure that we're using the best system that's out there. So we'll have this fixed.
Excellent. Nice presentation, Tom.
Thank you, sir. I'll try to go slower next time.
Catch your breath.
Yeah.
Hassan, we need some kind of outro music to end the workshops with.
You've been listening to Tom Libby.
There you go. That's it.
On the workshop today.
That's it.
You all have a great day.
Join us again for another exciting episode 1 month from today.
1 month from today.
Speaking of which, for those of you still here, so next workshop we're going to have is going to be Charlie Pascal, and it's going to be going over some of the legalities and legal stuff. We don't have a title for it yet, but once the title is up, we'll get it up there for you. But it is definitely going to be in the legal realm.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome.
Have a great one.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, good
Good
one.
content. Have a great day.